Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Mirror's Edge. I played it originally on the Xbox 360. I recently replayed it on the PC via Steam. It's also available on the PS3 if you still got it, but you can play it on the Xbox One or Series X via backwards compatibility. So let's get into the story. You play as Faith. She is what is known as a runner, and in the city that she is a runner in, crime has not necessarily been wiped out, but it's been pushed to the edges of society. Everything has this very overly pristine, clean vibe to it. It's kind of one of those dystopian ideas. Definitely a surveillance state type idea, and people use runners to deliver secret messages, do crime, etc., etc. Unfortunately for Faith, her sister gets wrapped up in a much larger conspiracy, and Faith decides, well, I'm gonna help my sister out, get her out of this jam, and it of course throws Faith into the larger conspiracy. And the first thing I'm going to say about the story is what is there is good, but it's not necessarily a satisfying ending. Like when I hit that ending, I was like, okay, this is fine and all, but it could have been more. There's a few things that are just overly predictable throughout as well, but they work fine. Let's move on to the audio. And the first thing I'm going to say is when it comes to the voice acting, some of the characters are done well, some of them not so well. It really does just vary from character to character, but overall I would say it's good enough. Let's get into the music, and during gameplay, the music is good, it works well enough, it's nothing that's necessarily going to stick with you forever and ever. Now that having been said, when you get to the end credits, the song that plays over that is way better than everything else in the original soundtrack. It's far less generic, it really fits with the vibe of everything going on. I remember them using it in the trailers, it worked great. Now let's get into the sound effects, and since you're a free runner and you're running around, footstep sound effects and running on walls and jumping and whooshing air, all of that stuff is kind of key. It's really key to selling the actions and the movements of the game, and they all sound really good. If you listen, you can hear the sound of fabric even in the wind or when you're kicking and punching and things like that. There are weapons in the game. When it comes to their sound effects, I think there's a good variety, but I don't think they're necessarily as meaty as they could be. But a bit of a spoiler for the gameplay mechanics, gunplay isn't the core mechanic of this game, so I guess it doesn't matter as much that they're not as meaty. Which, let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a first-person, free-running, like parkour type of game. When it comes to gameplay, that is the core of it. It is trying to find the fastest route from A to B, which in some cases can protect you from getting shot. There's a hand-to-hand combat element to it. You can also pick up guns and use them, but if you're done using a gun, you should absolutely drop it because it will slow you down and screw up your free running, which is, again, the core element. One thing I'm going to say right away is I remember the free running working way better. Some of the contextual moments, I remember it working better. I remember running on the wall, turning, jumping, all of that flowing so very well. But replaying it, it didn't feel like it flowed nearly as well. I also didn't feel like the combat had the depth that it needed to really give you the sense that Faith was actually adept in this combat. I would run into enemies and I would be trying to do stuff and I just felt very limited and I'd get my ass kicked and die. There were times where I'd be trying to jump, but instead I'd run on the wall, or I'd be trying to run on the wall and instead I would jump. There were times where the character wouldn't grab onto ledges. There were things like that that were occurring. And while none of it necessarily was destroying my experience, it definitely was destroying my memory of the experience. Some of it did get a little frustrating, honestly, but it wasn't anything that I couldn't get over. The checkpoints are good enough that you don't lose a lot, and you tend to get right back into it very quickly. One cool thing they do that is visually and gameplay important is things will turn red that will help guide you. They're free running objects. It's like your sight locks onto them kind of idea. Which, speaking of sight locking onto, they give you a button that will actually like point you in the direction of your objective, which can be really useful trying to figure out if you need to go up, down, left, right sometimes. Which, let's get into the controls. Now, I was complaining about some of the contextual issues I was having from a gameplay standpoint. I did feel the controls worked well though. They were responsive. They did what I wanted them to do most of the time. I felt like the buttons were responding, but the game itself just wasn't quite getting what I was trying to do. Now let's move on to the graphics and visuals, and in some ways it's still a really cool looking game, but it hasn't aged great. This was definitely at that time where they were going for a much more realistic look, but they couldn't quite deliver in the same way that we're getting now. Some of it doesn't really hold up as well. A lot of the character designs, they just don't look as good as you would hope. I remember thinking it looked good at the time, but it really just doesn't hold up well today. We've evolved so much from that time. There's also hit or miss on the animations. Some of the animations, specifically for Faith, are really well done, but for basically every other character, they're kind of crap. There are a couple of characters where they have some good animations, but then they have some really crap animations. Enemies' animations, for certain things, your interactions with them are better than other animations of theirs. And speaking of animation, this game does its cinematics in a very interesting way. They are animated, they are cartoons. I don't necessarily love the art style anymore, but I guess it works for what they were doing at the time. It's nothing that's going to destroy your experience by any stretch. It's just kind of an interesting choice. Now, the city is very interesting. I do like the design of that. It does fit that dystopian, very sterile kind of feeling where you would imagine you would have to hire people like Faith to deliver messages undetected. It does have that vibe of just overly clean, a little weird, you know, that kind of clean where you know there's something underneath that's being hidden, which is kind of the point of the game. I liked the free running animations though, and I did like how that felt and how it looked when you really got moving, when you were putting together a good chain. So overall, while it doesn't look as good as it could, it's not like it's necessarily terrible. Graphically, it definitely does show its age, but it has some really cool design elements, and that's actually the part that I think matters the most. Now, since I played on the computer, let's talk about performance a little bit, because I had some performance issues when I first started. When I first started, terrible tearing, just absolutely horrible tearing. I tried VSync, didn't do shit. And then when I completed the prologue, the game just completely froze on a white screen, and that happened repeatedly. What I found out is you have to turn off the physics option in the game's options, and once you do, you're fine, you're good to go. The game will, in fact, run well after that. It'll fix your tearing, and it'll fix your freezing. So let's get into the wrap up. And the first thing I'm going to say is I remember this game being way better. It just doesn't hold up the same, unfortunately, which isn't to say that it's terrible. It's just nostalgia had me a bit blinded. If I had to complain about anything else, I'd say it's a bit short, but there is the race mode, which allows you to go back and basically try and figure out the best routes, how to do things faster. When this game launched, there were leaderboards and whatnot. I think those have been shut down, but you can still play the race mode offline. Having said all of that, it doesn't hold up the way I remember it. That doesn't make it terrible, and it's a fairly cheap game, so if you are curious, I don't think it's not worth the money. But it's also not like a really strong recommendation from me either. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, has there ever been a game that you remember being just amazing, and when you've gone back and replayed it, you're like, oh, this really doesn't live up? As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, and if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.